A Bitcoin treasury strategy and strategy are vastly misunderstood. I don't plan on selling my strategy stock ever. I do personally believe that strategy will continue to outperform Bitcoin into the future. What's going to continue happening is people are going to continue buying MicroStrategy into the future perpetually and not even know it. Well, I want to front run all those people. You look back at Tesla, people wanted to hold it forever. And I think that's something very similar to what's happening here with strategy. Who wants strategy included in the S&P 500? Maybe BlackRock?
Where do you come down on something like the S&P inclusion? I don't know what the behavior of equities typically looks like when there's a market expectation that the S&P inclusion is coming soon. I actually don't know that there's a TradFi market expectation that that's coming soon. I think in Bitcoin, we think it should happen, but I'd be curious your thoughts on that too. That seems to be the other lever that's kind of in play.
Yeah, I've been researching this for like 24 months now. So I've been following strategies potential inclusion into the S&P 500 for 365 trading days in a row as of today. So this is something that I've been very interested in. And historically, if you go look at any analysis of when companies get included in the S&P 500, typically when the companies do get included, the stock goes the other way. The stock goes down. But it's really good to look at the analysis beforehand, like what's happening before inclusion, because the market knows all data at all times. So the question becomes, is it getting front run? How is it getting front run? Who's front running it? And what's the incentive of holding the equity into the future? So if you look at companies like Lululemon was added to the S&P 500 just recently, and it was front run. You go look at the stock beforehand, and then it was announced that they're added to the S&P 500. I think there was like a little bit of pop, and then the stock declined. In my opinion, what happened was the people that were holding Lululemon were holding it, anticipating this, and then sold, knowing that it was going to happen, and rotated to other opportunity cost of capital. Now, because why would you hold Lululemon? Like Lululemon's not going to the top of the publicly traded leaderboard. Now, there are situations where you look at other companies that are incredibly strong going to the S&P 500, and the mechanics of what's happened in the past is a little bit different. So if you look back at Tesla, and when Tesla was added to the S&P 500, they were added at a huge market cap, very similar to what Strategy is looking at potentially here, about a $300 billion market cap. Now, if you go back and look at their historical earnings leading up to it, you can kind of see that there was a trend in time where it started to look like Tesla was going to hit the final requirement to be included in the S&P 500, and the stock started to get front run. So it went from $100 billion to $300 or $400 billion before it was announced that it was going to be included in the S&P 500. Then it went from $400 or $500 billion up to $1 trillion in a very short time horizon. And what's happening there, in my opinion, is that it didn't matter about S&P inclusion. People wanted to hold it forever. They're like, Tesla's got an opportunity to be, one of the top 7 publicly traded companies probably for a very long time. There is no incentive to sell your stock to the passive inflows that are coming in the door. And I think that's something very similar to what's happening here with Strategy, because their balance sheet is designed and powered by Bitcoin. As the price of Bitcoin rises, they get a higher and larger participation in the market cap weighted index funds perpetually.
Mm-hmm.
And so there is less incentive to offload your stock into passive index flows into the future. Now, will they get included? That's a great question. I've been talking about this for a very long time. This is the most controversial topic of the year. And I think that the committee that has to deal with this is going to have a hard time excluding them. With the exception of like volatility. But if you think about the incentives are also aligned. Mm-hmm. Because who wants Strategy included in the S&P 500? Maybe BlackRock, right? Because if the S&P 500 includes MSTR and MSTR continues to perform well, BlackRock and all the companies that offer those S&P 500 index ETFs are going to generate fees off of those. Mm-hmm. And if that index starts to underperform other indices, people move capital. And we've already seen that happen. People are moving from the S&P 500, and a lot of capital is flowing to the NASDAQ 100 because it's a little bit more systematic and less committee based. And that landscape is evolving.
Okay, one more question, then I'll pass to the doctor. I agree with you that there's going to be rotation of capital, and I think just a general shift in thinking from traditional financial people and market participants from I don't understand Bitcoin, I can't invest in it, to I'm underperforming Bitcoin, I have to invest in it, and MSTR is the vehicle for that. I think there's real truth there. I'm glad you sort of kind of touched on it a little bit. On the earnings per share thing, you mentioned the Lulu, you mentioned the Tesla. I mean, you kind of see that same indicator now with the fair accounting for Bitcoin. And you mentioned that, their market cap is going to jump significantly as that continues to rip. I mean, I don't listen to every True North, but
That's fine. It's a lot of content.
but I'm curious, what was the response like in the community? Was it one of disappointment? You had that big EPS blowout and no movement, right? Sort of a downward move. Do you view that as a sell the news? Do you view that as a natural reaction? Like, what was the community thought, and maybe what do you think about it?
Yeah, there was a lot of hope for repricing, and there wasn't necessarily repricing. It kind of went the opposite way. So that was an interesting perspective. Looking forward into the future, I think this becomes one of those undeniable things that's hard to. I think it's going to become undeniable in the future as this moves forward. Right? They just posted a $32 earning per share. 45 days through Q3, they're sitting on a $23 or $24 earnings per share. And when you start to look at everything else in the market and you start to compare these things, it becomes pretty glaringly obvious very quickly that a lot of the other equity in the existing marketplace is, in my opinion, mispriced, significantly overextended relative to a company with an incredibly strong balance sheet. And a Bitcoin treasury strategy and strategy are vastly misunderstood. And I think there's a lot of education and reevaluation about how to value these companies that needs to happen in the marketplace. So, I mean, that's something that I'm talking about very consistently. You've got the entire equity market right now is priced on expectation of future cash flows, which to me is a measure of financial strength. And you have this other valuation mechanism, which is looking at a balance sheet. So like Berkshire Hathaway or insurance companies or banks. And the really unique part about Strategy's balance sheet valuation is that they're sitting on an asset that's outperforming everything else in the market, and they're accumulating it at a faster rate than anybody else is accumulating it at any other pace in the market. So should you use a bank or a Berkshire Hathaway valuation mechanism to value the company? Probably not, because it's a different asset and a different structure. And you compare it to the other things in the market, and it looks, the relative risk return trade-off looks significantly different. And I think there's a large portion of equities in the S&P 500, 493 of them are subject to AI disruption. And there's likely going to be a significant turnover in those companies in the S&P 500 as these Bitcoin treasury companies, strong balance sheet companies, crypto-backed companies, crypto exchanges, AI companies come into the fray and succeed and outpace some of these other companies.
You opted out of the broken financial system by adopting Bitcoin and taking self-custody of your money. But protecting your wealth is only part of the equation. Now it's time to protect your freedom. My family is stacking sats and stacking flags. A second passport is our hedge against government overreach and uncertainty. If you're a Bitcoiner looking for your exit strategy, our friends at Citizen X will help you secure second citizenship through investment or dissent. Book your free call today by hitting the link in the show notes or simply scanning the QR code on the screen. Let me break this down for my fellow Bitcoiners. In just 8 weeks, I've seen a serious shift. More strength, more energy, and fast muscle gains. The reason? FITSCRIPT. They ran 124 biomarkers, blood, hormones, inflammation, and built a fully custom plan: nutrition, training, supplements. No guesswork, no templates. This is functional medicine meets precision fitness for high-performing men who want sovereignty over their health. If you care about optimization the way you care about your money, test, don't guess. Don't trust, verify. Hit the link in the description or scan the QR code on the screen to check out FITSCRIPT and see what's possible.
All right, let's kick it over to Ahmad. I'm curious, you got thoughts, questions? Yeah, I mean, I'm not an expert in this, but what does Michael Saylor say when he's asked about the price?
Usually talks about Bitcoin. He doesn't talk about his. I mean, he talks about outperforming. He'll point to all the statistics. He's like, well, look at my stock over this horizon. It's outperformed everything else in the market, and look at it over this horizon. It's outperformed everything else in the market. Look at how much capital we've raised. Look at the these new instruments. A lot of the focus recently has been on these new instruments, which if you look at the new instruments, the performance is outstanding. They have outperformed every other fixed income instrument in the entire market, every other preferred equity instrument in the entire market. They're incredibly more liquid. They're over collateralized. They are whooping ass on every other fixed income instrument in the entire market, and they definitely point to that. If you go back and you look at the equity on the horizon from when they started buying Bitcoin, also whooping ass on everything else in the market. So that's what he points to, which I think is fair. And there's a reason. There's a reason you see other companies emulating this, is because the other companies emulating this are looking to raise capital and put more capital into their coffers, so they can whoop ass on all these other companies in the market.
Jeff, okay, one last question, Ben. I don't want to hold you up, but I mean, you're a Bitcoin guy, you're an MSTR guy, you're the VP of Bitcoin buying and strategy at
Strat.
My eyes used to be a lot better. Sorry, I can't read that. What do you think outperforms? If long term, is it MSTR or Bitcoin? And I guess if the answer is Bitcoin, then what on what time horizon are you planning to sell your MicroStrategy stock or your sort of adjacent preferreds or debt structured vehicles?
Yeah, I don't plan on selling my strategy stock ever. I plan on holding that like for the rest of my life. Really,
Is it just because it's a different a different bucket? Like I mean, in the States, you guys probably have these sort of assigned vehicles too, right? Like in Canada, we have tax efficient equity opportunities that I think a lot of Bitcoiners don't take advantage of incorrectly, in my view, though my peers would disagree with that. So is it just because they're different buckets you're holding one over the other, or because you think MSTR is going to outperform Bitcoin long term?
It's a little bit of both. It's a different bucket. It's an alternative exposure, but I think the world is just getting more digital in general. So I think there's a few things at play personally, from my opinion. One, all equities trade at a premium to their net asset value. So you go look at any of these companies, I think they're all going to continue to outperform.
Yep.
And all stocks are some expectation of future performance. So with that in mind, I do personally believe that strategy will trade at a higher multiple and will continue to outperform Bitcoin into the future.
Wow.
One of the reasons being is you look at all the value on the planet right now. Okay, there's 21 million Bitcoin, but there's millions and millions and millions of Bitcoin worth of value. Even if the world were fully denominated in Bitcoin and Bitcoin was the measuring stick for everything, like not every house in the world is going to be for sale at the same time. So there's going to be more than 21 million Bitcoin worth of value in the equity market, in the housing market, and all these other different marketplaces, because there's reasons for holding them, some sort of expectation for the future or store of value or whatever that may be. So it's a fun thought experiment, but like I'm going to be holding MSTR for a long time. Also, I can leverage against it far easier right now in any portfolio than I can with Bitcoin.
Yes, sir.
If I've got fully sovereign Bitcoin, I want it to be fully sovereign. I don't want to put it on exchange so I can go lever against it. I see Bitcoin as my complete savings mechanism. I don't want to do anything with it, and I want these other vehicles to do other things with.
Chat absolutely lit up here with the commentary.
Ahmed, you go ahead. I saw a hand.
Is it possible that people are just buying Bitcoin instead of buying MicroStrategy?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think it is happening. Right. There's two things in my mind. There's and honestly, it doesn't matter. Bitcoiners are buying Bitcoin because they like Bitcoin. They're super focused in it. The traditional financial world, just the way the architecture of the market is designed, there is passive flows coming into index funds every day. And it's going to continue into the future. You're not going to break that architecture. That architecture has been in place for a very long time and is not going to change. So what's going to continue happening is people are going to continue buying strategy into the future perpetually and not even know it. Anybody that buys the QQQ index, they're buying MicroStrategy. They don't even know it. So what are your incentives? Well, I want to front run all of those people, right? So I think about them just fundamentally differently. Bitcoiners are buying Bitcoin, and a lot of Bitcoiners that had bought MSTR and are frustrated with the performance are selling to go buy Bitcoin, which is fine. Like, if you don't feel comfortable with it, like it is what it is, but they are just fundamentally different products.
Hey, you. Yes, you watching the Bitcoin price movements and the latest exciting news. It's awesome to stay informed, but the real power of Bitcoin comes from taking control. Don't just watch, take action. Head over to btcsessions.ca/learn for free step-by-step tutorials that guide you through every major skill you need to know, plus full video playlists for deeper dives on any topic you like. And if you're ready for the ultimate fast track, scroll to the bottom and check out bitcoinmentor.io for premium one-on-one experience with my team of Bitcoin experts to ensure you get it right the first time. Don't wait. Secure your Bitcoin future today. Hit the link in the show notes or scan the QR code on the screen.